Hey everyone, ready to become cat food label detectives? It's crazy how much info is crammed onto those things.
You're telling me it's a lot to process.
It really is. But don't worry, today's deep dive is all about making sense of those labels so you can confidently choose the best food for your cat.
That's right. Knowledge is power when it comes to feeding our furry friends.
Exactly. And for this deep dive, we're taking a look at an article from Purina called How to Read Cat Food Labels.
Oh yeah, that one.
Full disclosure, they are a pet food company.
Right.
But no matter what brand you buy, the info on the label is pretty universal, and this article breaks it down nicely.
Totally agree. Our goal here is to help you understand what all that stuff means so you can shop smart for your cat.
Exactly. So let's imagine you're standing in the pet food aisle, staring at a wall of choices.
Yeah.
Where do you even begin?
So many options.
Well, the article points out something important. A lot of what's on those labels is actually required by law.
That's right. There are regulations in place to make sure all cat food labels are giving us certain information.
Makes sense. Consistency and transparency are good. So what are we required to see on a label?
Right. So the article breaks it down into sections.
Perfect. Let's go through them.
Okay. So first up, the overview.
Makes sense. What's in there?
You'll see the brand name, of course.
Obvious, but important.
Then the specific formula name, like chicken dinner and gravy, or ocean whitefish formula.
Okay, so you know exactly what you're getting.
And the net weight, of course, so you know how much food you're actually buying.
That's important for comparisons, too. Some bags look bigger but have less food. Okay, overview's done. What's next?
Then we get into the manufacturer or distributor information.
Right, so we know who made it, right?
Right. Might not be the most exciting part, but it's good for traceability.
Yeah, if you ever need to contact them with questions or, if there's ever like a recall or something.
Exactly.
Oh, and speaking of tracing things back, this surprised me. The article mentions that Purina labels actually include info that can pinpoint the exact date and even the plant where that specific bag of food was produced.
Really? That's cool.
Right. You can actually trace its journey. Talk about knowing your food's backstory.
That's pretty impressive.
Okay, let's get a little more technical. What about this guaranteed analysis?
Right. This section lists the minimum percentages of certain nutrients, like crude protein and fat, and the maximum percentages of crude fiber and moisture.
Crude. Sounds a bit rough. What's that about?
It's just a scientific term, don't worry. It refers to how they measure those nutrients in the lab.
Ah, so it's standardized.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And even though the law only requires those four, a lot of companies will list percentages for other nutrients too.
Nice. Extra info. What's next on our label adventure?
The nutritional adequacy statement. This is where you find that familiar phrase, complete and balanced.
Ah, yes, the holy grail of cat food claims. But what does it actually mean?
It means the food meets the standards set by AAFCO, the American Association of Feed Control Officials.
Right, AAFCO. They're the ones who make sure pet food is safe and nutritious.
Exactly. And it means the food provides all the essential nutrients a cat needs for a specific life stage kitten, adult, or senior.
So that's why you see different formulas for kittens versus older cats.
Yep, exactly. Different needs at different ages.
Got it. Then we have feeding directions, but those are more like guidelines than rules.
You got it. Every cat is different.
My cat, Whiskers, he could eat all day if I let him.
Right. You need to adjust the amount based on your cat's age, how active they are, their metabolism. Even their breed can play a role.
So many factors.
Yep. And if you're ever unsure, talk to your vet. They can help you figure out the best portions for your furry friend.
Makes sense. Better to be safe than sorry. Last but not least on our label tour, what about the calorie statement?
This one is key for making sure your cat's getting the right amount of energy.
And for watching their weight, right?
Especially if your kitty is prone to those extra chonk points.
Guilty as charged. My Whiskers loves his snacks.
It happens to the best of us. But the calorie statement helps you compare brands and make informed choices.
Makes sense. All right, so we've covered the basic legally required info, but now I'm curious, what are those kibbles and cans actually made of? The article dives into ingredients versus nutrients, and that seems kind of crucial.
Absolutely. The ingredient list tells us what's in the food, like chicken, fish, corn, rice.
Right, the stuff we recognize.
But it's the nutrients, those ingredients provide the protein, fat, vitamins, and minerals that really matter for your cat's health.
Okay, so it's like knowing the difference between the raw materials and the finished product.
Exactly.
So let's talk about those essential nutrients. The article starts with protein, and apparently cats need way more of it than we do. Why is that?
Cats are obligate carnivores, meaning they're designed to thrive on a meat-based diet. Their bodies are super efficient at using protein and need more of it than dogs or humans.
Fascinating. It's like they're built to be little hunters. But what does protein actually do in their bodies? Why is it so important?
It's the building block for pretty much everything: muscles, tissues, enzymes, hormones, even their beautiful fur.
Wow, so protein is involved in their whole system functioning properly. The article also mentions amino acids. Are those just fancy words for protein, or?
Think of amino acids like the individual Legos that make up the protein castle.
Okay, I like that analogy.
Cats need 22 different types to function properly, but some, called essential amino acids, have to come from their diet. They can't make them themselves.
So it's not just about the amount of protein, but the quality and the specific building blocks it provides. And speaking of quality, the article talks about animal-based versus plant-based protein. Is one better than the other?
Cats can digest both, but only animal proteins have all those essential amino acids in the right amounts. So when you're checking that ingredient list, make sure real meat or fish sources are high up on the list.
Meat first. Got it. This is making me hungry. The article even mentions that cats need about 2.3 grams of protein per pound of body weight. So like a 10-pound cat would need roughly 23 grams of protein per day.
Yeah, that's a good rule of thumb.
Super helpful. Okay, let's move on to another nutrient that sometimes gets a bad rap. Fat. We've been told to avoid it, but it sounds like cats actually need it.
Oh, absolutely. Fat is a super concentrated source of energy for cats. Plus, it's crucial for healthy skin and a shiny coat.
Okay, so fat is good for their looks.
Right. Plus, it helps protect their organs and even build those brain cells.
So it's not about eliminating fat. It's about choosing healthy sources and making sure it's balanced with the other nutrients. Speaking of balance, the article says cats need a whopping 25 different vitamins and minerals. Why so many? That's more than we need.
Cats have some unique metabolic needs, and those vitamins and minerals play a key role in keeping everything running smoothly. They're involved in everything from energy production to immunity, bone health, vision, you name it.
Wow, that's a lot to keep track of. But at least a complete and balanced food should have that covered, right?
Exactly. The manufacturer has added those necessary vitamins and minerals to meet AAFCO standards.
Okay, that's reassuring. Now, time to tackle another controversial nutrient. Carbohydrates. Are carbs really the enemy of cat food? Or are they getting a bad rap?
They're definitely not the enemy. In fact, carbs can be a good source of energy for cats, and they provide fiber, which is important for healthy digestion.
So it's not about banning carbs completely, but choosing the right types and amounts. The article mentions some common sources like grains and alternatives like potatoes or peas.
Yeah, it's all about finding the right balance.
Got it. All right, so we've covered the key players: protein, fat, vitamins and minerals, and carbs. But what about those other ingredients, the ones with long scientific names that make me feel like I'm back in chemistry class?
Yes, the mystery ingredients. They can be intimidating. But most of the time, those long names are simply the scientific terms for vitamins and minerals.
Wait, really? So they're not sneaking weird chemicals into our cat's food?
Not at all. For example, the article mentions L-ascorbyl-2-polyphosphate. Sounds scary, right? But it's just the scientific name for vitamin C.
Oh, okay. I feel much better about that. But why use such complicated names? Why not just say vitamin C?
Scientific names make sure everyone's on the same page. It's a standardized way to identify specific vitamins and minerals no matter the brand, like a universal language for ingredients.
Makes sense. No more fear of long words. So we've cracked the code on ingredients, but now let's move on to another tricky part of cat food labels. Those claims and certifications. Terms like natural and organic get thrown around a lot, but what do they actually mean in the pet food world?
That's a great question because those terms can be misleading. Unlike human food, where natural isn't really regulated, there is a specific definition for natural when it comes to pet food.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it means the food doesn't contain any chemically synthesized ingredients except for vitamins, minerals, and amino acids.
Okay, so if I see natural on a cat food label, I can be pretty sure it's made with minimally processed ingredients. What about organic? Is that regulated differently?
The USDA has a definition for organic that applies to both human food and pet food. For pet food to be labeled as organic, it has to meet strict standards.
What kind of standards?
Like using ingredients grown without pesticides, herbicides, or GMOs.
Wow, so organic is definitely a step above natural. The article also mentions other phrases we might see, like formulated to meat and animal feeding tests. Can you break those down for us?
Sure. Formulated to meet means that the company has analyzed the food to make sure it meets AAFCO's nutrient profile for the life stage it's intended for.
Okay, so they haven't necessarily done feeding trials, but on paper, it ticks all the boxes.
Exactly. And then animal feeding tests means the food has actually been fed to cats in an AFCO-approved study.
So real-world evidence that the food is safe and provides all the necessary nutrients.
Exactly.
Awesome. Wow, we've covered so much ground already. From those legally required label sections to the difference between ingredients and nutrients, I feel like I'm starting to see those cat food labels in a whole new light.
I'm glad to hear that. You're well on your way to becoming a label reading pro.
Thanks to your expertise.
Yeah.
But our deep dive isn't over yet.
Welcome back, everyone. We're diving right back into those cat food labels. Last time we decoded all that required info and talked about those essential nutrients our cats need.
Right. But choosing cat food isn't always as simple as just checking the label.
Yeah, there's a lot of conflicting info out there.
So many opinions and myths floating around, it can be confusing.
For sure. So today we're going to tackle some of those head on.
Mythbusters. I love it. Hit me with the first one. What do people often get wrong about cat food?
One of the biggest misconceptions is that all cats can thrive on the same diet. Just like us humans, cats have unique needs based on their age, breed, activity level, and even their overall health.
Right, that makes total sense. I mean, my cat, Whiskers, is a senior gentleman who enjoys napping in sunbeams, but my neighbor's cat, Luna, is a young, energetic Bengal who's always on the go. They definitely shouldn't be eating the same thing.
Exactly. A kitten needs a diet higher in calories and protein to support all that growth, and a super active adult cat needs more calories than a couch potato.
Makes sense. What about different life stages?
Right, so senior cats often need a diet that's easier in their digestion and lower in calories.
To match their slower metabolism.
Exactly.
So, tailoring the food to the individual cat is key. What about cats with, specific health conditions? I have a friend whose cat has a sensitive stomach, and she's always struggling to find food that doesn't upset his tummy.
Oh yeah, that's a common one. Thankfully, there are a lot of foods formulated for sensitive digestion.
That's good to hear.
You just have to pay close attention to that ingredient list,
All right, look for any potential triggers.
Some common culprits for tummy troubles are certain grains, dairy products, and artificial colors or flavors.
Good to know. So reading the label carefully is key. Now, what about those grain-free diets that are everywhere these days? Are they really better for cats, or is that just hype?
It's a good question. While some cats might have genuine sensitivities to certain grains, most cats can actually digest them just fine.
Really?
Yep. And grains can actually be a good source of nutrients and fiber. It's more about choosing high-quality grains and making sure the overall diet is balanced.
So not about demonizing grains completely, but making informed choices.
Right. Now, here's a question I think every cat owner has thought about at some point: wet food versus dry food, which is actually better?
The age-old debate. I'm ready to hear your take on this.
The truth is, both wet and dry food have their pros and cons.
I knew it. It's never that simple.
Right. Wet food tends to be higher in moisture, which can be beneficial for cats who aren't great drinkers. It's often more appealing to picky eaters, too.
Yeah, my Whiskers definitely prefers wet food. He gives me the side eye if I try to serve him dry kibble. But what about the advantages of dry food?
Well, dry food is definitely more convenient.
That's true. It's easier to store.
It lasts longer, and it can be more affordable, too.
All good points.
Plus, that crunchy kibble can help with dental health, stripping plaque and tartar off their teeth.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all answer. It really depends on the individual cat, right?
Exactly. Their needs, preferences, lifestyle, all of that plays a role.
Some cats might do great on all dry food, others might be all about that wet food, and some might need a mix of both.
Right. And if you're ever unsure, a chat with your vet can help. They can assess your cat's individual needs and make recommendations.
Makes sense. Vets know best. Speaking of vets, I have another question that pops up a lot. How often should we be changing our cat's food?
Oh, that's a good one.
We know we shouldn't switch things up too drastically.
Right. Sudden changes can upset their stomach.
But is it good to introduce some variety into their diet?
It's a great question, and one that can spark a lot of debate.
I bet.
Some cats are creatures of habit and love sticking to the same food.
Like my Whiskers. He's all about routine.
But others might enjoy some variety.
So how do you recommend going about it? How do you introduce a new food without, causing a feline food rebellion?
Start by mixing a small amount of the new food with their current food and slowly increase the proportion over several days or even weeks. This gives them time to adjust.
Okay, so ease them into it.
Right. And always keep an eye out for any signs of digestive issues.
Makes sense. It's like easing them into a new culinary adventure. What about those cats who are just super picky? Any tips for those stubborn eaters?
Picky eaters can be a challenge. Sometimes, it's just finding a flavor or texture they love.
So many options out there.
Right. But other times it can be behavioral. Cats are smart. They can learn to manipulate us into giving them what they want.
Oh, tell me about it. Whiskers is the king of giving me those big sad eyes until I cave and give him some tuna.
Aha, I know those eyes. If your cat is being particularly stubborn, try warming up their food slightly.
To make it smell more appealing.
Exactly. You can also add a little low-sodium chicken broth or tuna juice.
Ooh, that's clever.
And most importantly, be patient. It might take some trial and error.
True. Finding the right food can be a journey. But what about when they just aren't eating much at all? How do you know if it's just a picky phase or something more serious?
That's when you want to consult with your vet.
They'd know best.
Loss of appetite can be a symptom of other health conditions, so it's always best to rule those out.
Better to be safe than sorry.
Exactly. Your vet can help figure out what's going on and recommend the best course of action.
All right, so we've tackled some major misconceptions, answered common questions, and I feel much more prepared to handle those tricky feeding situations now.
That's great to hear.
Welcome back, everyone. We've decoded those labels, busted some myths, and even gotten some tips for making mealtime more enjoyable. Now let's talk specific ingredients.
Right. We know that ingredient lists can look intimidating, but understanding what's good and what to avoid can make a big difference.
So let's break it down. What are those all-star ingredients, the ones that make you go, yes, this is good stuff?
Well, for protein, prioritize those high-quality animal sources. Chicken, fish, turkey, beef, lamb. Those are the best for our little carnivores.
So the closer to the real thing, the better.
Yeah.
Like an actual chicken breast is better than meat byproduct.
You got it. Specific and recognizable ingredients are key. Ideally, that named animal protein should be the very first ingredient on the list.
Okay, so that means it's the main component. Makes sense. What about healthy fats? Are there specific types we should look for?
Look for those rich in omega-3s and omega-6s. Those are super important for healthy skin, a shiny coat, and brain function.
I've heard those are good for us humans too.
They are. For cats, good sources include fish oil, flaxseed oil, and even chicken fat.
Okay, so those are the good guys. Now, what about the ingredients that make you go, maybe not?
One thing to watch out for are artificial colors and flavors. They don't add any nutritional value and can even cause allergies.
Right. I try to avoid artificial stuff myself.
Yeah.
What about preservatives? Those long chemical names are always a little concerning.
Yeah, some preservatives like BHA and BHT have been linked to potential health issues. It's best to look for foods with natural preservatives like vitamin E or rosemary extract.
Natural preservatives sound much better. What about those mysterious fillers? What are they, and why are they bad news?
Fillers are cheap ingredients added to bulk up the food, but they don't provide much nutrition. Things like corn gluten meal, wheat middlings, soybean hulls.
Ah, so they're like the junk food of cat food. Empty calories.
Exactly. Focus on those nutrient-dense ingredients, not the fillers.
This is also helpful. I feel like I can actually read those ingredient lists now. But beyond choosing the right food, what about making mealtime more enjoyable for our cats? Any tips?
Definitely. Mealtime shouldn't just be about filling their bellies. It should be a positive experience.
I love that. So how do we make it more fun for them?
First, make sure their bills are in a quiet place, away from any distractions. They need a calm environment.
That makes sense. Like, we wouldn't want to eat in a stressful environment either.
Exactly. You can also try puzzle feeders or interactive toys.
To make mealtime more challenging.
Yeah, it keeps them mentally engaged, especially for indoor cats.
My cat would love that. He's super curious.
And lastly, make mealtime a bonding experience. Talk to your cat, pet them gently, just let them know you're there.
Oh, that's sweet. Mealtime is bonding time. Well, we've covered so much in this deep dive, from deciphering labels to those tricky feeding questions and now specific ingredients. I feel like a cat food expert.
You're definitely on your way, but remember, this is just the start. Keep learning and stay connected to your cat. You'll be a pro in no time.
Amazing. And remember, everyone, the best cat food is the one that fits your individual cat's needs. So don't be afraid to experiment a little, talk to your vet, and find what works best for your furry friend. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into cat food labels. Until next time, happy feeding.